Hello and welcome to Speak Out, the one show where we bring to light several questions unanswered, problems untouched, voices unheard. I am your host Kevin, and in today's episode of Speak Out, we will be dealing with the issue of price hike in fuel prices. But before we begin, I would like to welcome all of our guests today. Thank you so much for being with us today. The year is 2012, and India has seen the highest rise in fuel price within 2 years in her history. The country depends heavily on fossil fuel for its energy. However, there has been several fluctuations in fuel prices, and this is adversely affecting the entire population of the country. Who among us are of the view that the rise in fuel prices is a bad thing? Can you please raise your hands? All right, thank you so much. When we talk of fuel, automobile transport is the first thing that comes to mind. So let's just first talk about that. And as of today, the price of a liter of petrol is rupees 78, that of diesel is 68, and that of kerosene is rupees 33. The price of petrol rose from rupees 8 to 58 per liter in 20 years till 2010. But between 2011 and 2012, it rose to rupees 78 in a span of 2 years. So can anyone from the audience please comment on how this rise in price is affecting you as an Indian citizen? Yes?
Yeah. As he mentioned right now, the fuel price hike is very steep and also in very short span of time. So as we can understand, people's income have not gone up as considerably. And I'm talking not about the top 5% or 3%. I'm talking about the common man. People's income hasn't gone up. On the other hand, the fuel price, which affects everything, starting from the morning breakfast to at night dinner, everything. And you go to office, go to your workplace, go to your school, everywhere, you have to travel, transport and everything, it affects badly, the fuel price hike. So in one hand, majority's income is not going up. And on the other, the cost of life is going up. So it's very easy to calculate and estimate how is it going to affect us. And think about the, underprivileged people, people who are at the bottom of the ladder. They will face the most of the problems because they have to go to workplace, they have to migrate from one place to another. They live already in a very vulnerable condition. And so it's going to be a hell of everything for them.
Right. So what you're talking about is that this rise in fuel price will affect the monthly budgets of citizens, is it? Right. So as you have mentioned, we also have to take into account the lives of those who are below or under the below poverty line, or the BPL. The government has fixed the poverty line at rupees 447 a month, while the average expenditure of a household on kerosene is around rupees 200 per month. However, we also have to take into consideration that the government is also incurring huge losses from paying subsidies for fuel resources, and the country cannot avoid this rise in fuel prices. So what I would like to ask you guys is, can someone survive on rupees 200 a month at all?
I think not even a single individual in this country can stay alive on 200 rupees per month. I think if somebody fixes a price of 200 rupees per month, it's below a starvation line. It's not even a below poverty line. It's a below a starvation line. So I think this governments, these kinds of estimations are completely wrong, and they are completely baseless, without any information, without any ground reality. These kinds of estimates are being made, which is completely wrong for any individual in this country.
Right. Prashil has to say
Yeah,
something.
I think fuel price is a very middle class problem, right? For the person who earns 200 or 500 rupees per day, doing daily wage labor or other work, for them fuel is not at all a problem, especially petrol. Right? They still would continue. It is the middle class who's facing a problem. Even if the price goes to 100 rupees, they'll continue. Having said that, the problem does not lie with the government in terms of its working. extracting crude oil, refining it, but it's collusion with the private players who derive a lot of profit in terms of buying shares from the profit-making companies. And the statements relating to the government bodies IOCL, BPCL, HPCL making losses is a sham. It's not true. Last 1 year, ending March 2011, now 2012, IOCL has made 200% profit. Similarly, BPCL has made over 300% profit. So who's gaining out of this is a nexus between the public and private people. And who's losing out is the middle class, but that's not a problem. Middle class will find a way through, like in India they always have. They'll still continue supporting either the government or the private sector. So, in terms of relational activity level for the so-called underprivileged, it's not a problem. I mean, petrol is not really a problem.
I would just like to disagree on one point, that petrol is not a problem for the lower income group. Or see, I'll give a very simple and short example. People who migrate from the rural areas to the urban areas and join mostly the informal sectors to work in, for example, the construction works and all, they stay in the city, right? They stay in the city, so they have to buy the food from the city, the vegetables, and the vegetables which are transported from the rural areas to the urban areas. If the fuel price goes up, the transportation cost will go up. And also we have, at the same time, food inflation independently. So food inflation will add to the price hike of the food, and also the fuel price will add to it in terms of the transportation cost. So I don't see any reason why won't the the lower below the poverty line people and the lower income people will not face a problem. So.
I would like to ask this region, can you make any relation between inflation and how it's affecting the underprivileged sections of the society?
Yeah, actually, most of the points actually they have already made. What can we add to it is when you mention fuel, petroleum is not the only fuel. It is affecting. There are many people who barely are able to make their ends meet, especially in urban areas where they have to commute. Petroleum, LPG. When you say petroleum in general sense, rather than petrol, from petroleum products, LPG and all the other products also come into preview. So for them, it's extremely adverse. But if you go to rural areas, some of the people, they don't use fuel, for instance, petroleum as such, but what they use is wood. For some of those segment, when even some of they say that not everybody is affected, these are the people they are mentioning that they might not be affected as much. But yes, there is a segment which comes under lives a very difficult life, is adversely affected by it.
Let's, with that in mind, let's see what our people who are who come into contact with this issue on a daily basis. Let's see what they have to say.
To me personally, I think the hike in diesel prices was, it was long due because we have a cross subsidy. So diesel prices were meant to be increased.
While the hike in the fuel price doesn't really make much of a difference, in the sense that if you really need to go somewhere, you take the car. But having said that, I still like to say that I try and use the car as less as I can. Like say when I come to college, I could come in bus or in auto, right? So that's what I do.
It's really pinching on the pocket.
డీజిల్ పెట్రోల్ ధరలు పెరగడం వలన ట్రాన్స్పోర్టేషన్ ఛార్జెస్ పెరిగిపోయి దాని ఎఫెక్ట్ నిత్యావసర సరుకుల మీద పడుతుంది. నిత్యావసర సరుకులు కూడా పెరిగిపోయి అలాగే హోటల్ రన్ చేయడం కూడా చాలా కష్టంగా ఉంటుంది.
I'm not feeling the pinch a lot, but I think people will, because I don't run the household. No, probably my mother will be feeling the pinch more than me.
Right. However, we also have to take into account the government is incurring huge losses from paying subsidies for fuel resources, and it cannot also avoid rise in fuel prices. With this in mind, is the rise in kerosene and other fuel prices justified, or can the center have taken other measures to curb this?
Yeah, so there's a shift in policy reform as this has happened. Very recently, our fuel prices have been deregulated. So we are connected to the world markets right now. So whenever there's a fluctuation in the world markets, we'll inevitably be affected by that. But what the government has also done is that whenever the fuel price goes beyond a certain range, I mean, if it increases drastically, then they said that they'll probably subsidized then. But since there's a shift in policy reform, there's a shift in policy analysis. So after that, you can't really help it. I mean, once the policy is taken, you're directly connected to the world market, and hence you can't do anything about that. Number two is that we, as a country itself, I mean, our biggest import is petrol and fuel products. So in the sense that how the dynamics of our economy works itself, we are dependent in fuel prices. So unless and until we find another alternative fuel, which is exactly replaceable, we'll always have these problems recurring in one way. And since we are all connected to the world markets, this is an innovative problem which will always happen. So if not now, we'll have to face it later on.
Right. Well, thank you for your responses. And on that note, we'll be going for a break. Welcome back to Speak Out, the one show that brings to light questions unanswered, problems untouched, voices unheard. In this session, we are talking about the price hike in fuel prices. Continuing with that, if the fuel prices have gone up rapidly in the recent years, the demand for fuel still continues to be very high. Given the fact that hike in prices of commodities like petrol, diesel, kerosene, LPG, these are politically sensitive issues. So can I have your views on what this situation presents to the people of this country?
Okay, how it is justified, what I can say is, how does the government and his advisors, people who have raised the prices, how do they justify it? Basically, they justify it in, say, the points you can put in. One, they say investor confidence. Say that this price, the way the FDI is going out, the changes are occurring. This is hampering investor confidence, and we need to build up investor confidence. Now, what is hampering it? He's saying that we have high fiscal deficit. We cannot control these subsidies. We need to increase prices. The subsidy will go overboard. That's how they justify it. Fiscal deficit. That's one. Investor confidence, which depends on that. And then one which they say it's the middle class who are making all the hue and cry. They are the ones who are affected, not the extremely poor. They are saying we are not increased kerosene that much. They are saying that LPG, the number of cylinders, very poor use, are not that much high. So the people who are majorly affected, yes, it's middle class, but not the extreme poor, which you might call BPL. So that's another point they make. And I think another is, they say that we are import dependent, so we need to curtail demand. They say we need to curtail the amount of petrol, kerosene, and all these things which you use. So, but here, this is to justification, these are the justification which they give. So I will only make a point on the last one, which say that curtailing demand. So fact that these commodities which we are talking about are necessities. So the issue of curtailing, I think it becomes very difficult. It's not a luxury which you can simply substitute. One person living in an urban area cannot substitute that easily. He might go to electricity for cooking, but the very limited choice to substitute LPG.
Can I have the others comment also?
Okay, the issue of price hike in petroleum products is surely a politically sensitive issue, because it's the issue which is which involving all the common people of this country, and especially when we say that the government is pro people, the government is for the poor people of this country. I think any increase in price hike, any price hike in petroleum products is affecting each and every individual of this country. And when governments tries to say that we have no other option except increasing the price of petroleum products because the companies are recurring losses, basically it makes a sense whose government is this. The government should be of the people, but its argument is that is the companies are running losses. In fact, the companies are not running losses. Each and every fiscally, each and every quarterly, we have all the companies expanding its profit percentage. Despite it saying that government is despite this government is saying that companies are running out of profit, but it's not correct. Second thing is that in the last few years, government has given 5 lakhs crores rupees of tax evasion to the corporate house. It had never given a tax evasion. It had never increased the wages of the agricultural people. If the companies are running losses, think about the poor, think about the agricultural laborers, those who are toiling in the fields. Their wages have not gone up. What about their losses for last so many years? So I think this is, if they say that company are running losses, basically it means the government is not of the poor people, it's of the corporate houses, and that's why it's saying these kinds of arguments.
Can I have your comment, please?
So looking at other angle of it, a large percentage of the petrol price is the central duty and excise duty also. So if we see where is that amount going to, that is being distributed to the public schemes. Now, if government has to do anything, whether it's politically sensitive because that money is diverted into public schemes. Now, if you reduce the petrol prices, if you reduce the taxes, obviously you have to increase the other taxes also. If you are not doing either of the things, what will happen is there will be no money, or else minimal amount of money for the public schemes. Yeah, it's related to corruption. If we'll prevent the leakages, there might be some stability, but it's politically sensitive because of this reason.
Can I briefly have your...
Yeah, I think, at least the question in this section seems to be how politically sensitive are subsidies. And I think it's important to get a bit of context into this. Historically, over the last 30 years, India has been going through a regime of increasing subsidies. A lot of these subsidies have not been done out of any economic motivation. More of them have been done for political motivation. That is, we've built up large vested interest groups which depend on certain subsidies and give back votes in turn. Now, the biggest problem with such a process is that it gives subsidies in a universal way. That is, that everyone gets equal amount of subsidies in a certain section. I think what is required at this point is to start making a more targeted subsidies. That is, people who are much more probably vulnerable to changes in fuel price hike, they are the ones who should be subsidized, and not universally across the board. The second thing I think that we should keep in context is also that there have been a disproportionate jump in subsidies since 2007. And this coincides with UPA coming into power as a majority. So the other problem that we have to look at is that, is it politically, if we do not, or if we drop subsidies, is that going to hurt the stability at the center or not? I think that's another question that has to be kept in mind when we recommend that subsidies should be brought back across the board.
Last one, very quickly, please.
Well, on the political sensitivity issue, I think it's sensitive because you see, when there's a fuel price hike, there's the right and left wing groups who come together on the same platform and do and stage a protest. You see BJP and CPI coming together, right? Though they embark on different issues, but they come on the same platform. So it's not as sensitive as the government is probably making it seem. So that's
right. The next question is, deregulation of tariffs has been a major reason for frequent fluctuations of prices. So is this hike in the marketplace justified?
See, talking about deregulation, I still wonder when government says that we have allowed the price to go up this much. The very word that we have allowed this much, it means that we are not yet deregulated completely. So there are some regulation of some sort or the other. Now the point is, as it was discussed earlier, you see only when it is about the large companies that they are making losses, although they are not. So then they say we are going to, okay, it's left to the market. The other point is, our steepest hike was in May 2012. But if you look at, because they say it's connected with it was also discussed here, it was connected with the international market, international prices, those fluctuations creep in India. So the point, if you look at the data, what we find is, from the last of 2011 or maybe early 2012 till June 2012, there was a continuous decrease in the world market price of petroleum. But you plot that hike in May, so and then it went up from June, and the increase slowed down a little bit from the August to September. So I don't know. I wonder, it's completely market or it's something that the vested interest group. And also today, you see, we have to talk about the former minister, oil ministry and whatever, because he's been shifted, kicked away, whatever it is. So, and people are anticipating it's because of his conflict with the Reliance group. So the point here is that we say deregulation, but some of us, we are actually skeptical that there might be some regulation of the other, of different vested groups that playing role.
Yeah, the price, in fact, the price came down, like he was just mentioning, from $107 per barrel to $90 per barrel. And apparently the price of production of crude oil is rupees 40 per litre. So, and we are being sold at almost double the price, right? So that's one thing I wanted to bring in.
Yes, please.
Actually, when you're talking about deregulation, you have to remember who Manmohan Singh is. Manmohan Singh was the finance minister in 1991. When he came to power, when he was put as prime minister, he said he is the person who brought India out of crisis. That was the agenda. And they were saying he is the economist who can lead further the growth of India. That was the agenda. So he actually is continuing that agenda. Same thing. And what is bringing about all these deregulation? Again, the main concern for any government, even if you go to right now America or any other government, the main concern always for the government has to be the fiscal deficit. How much it earns, how much it spends, and then the deficit. So that's what is bringing about all that. And it has some commitments, even commitments with IMA. I don't know exactly what it is right now. But again, when it comes to say, why cannot, if all you need is to save money, why do you have to tax people, things which affect poor? Why not tax the corporates? Now the answer to that is because, again, if you tax the corporates, they will simply move out. In a liberal environment, investor confidence work. If you do not give them they are subsidies, which he said tax exemptions, you have to give them to attract them. Whereas poor, they have nowhere to go. You can tax them. It is like Dandi March was done by Gandhiji, because salt, it was the most profitable tax. To tax the salt, which is a necessity, it is the most profitable. If you tax necessities, that brings more revenue. If you then tax luxury, people won't simply buy them.
Right.
Yes, what he says is completely true. We have to attract the 5 or 10 people and have to go, sacrifice 90. That's the tragedy of Indian economy right now.
And if it is about the tax exemption, we saw it in Goa, what happened, they decreased taxes on petrol prices, but what happened to other taxes is they have increased taxes on other things, luxury goods, on cars, on everything. So it's going to affect people in some or the other way. I mean, people in such middle class, or else people who have purchasing power. It's going to affect them in some or the other way.
Right. With that in mind, I would just like to take a vote right now. Please listen to this carefully. The hike in fuel price is an important step towards averting fiscal disasters, overcoming fiscal deficit, especially due to subsidies that the government gives. However, studies show that the actual impact of fuel price hike on core inflation has been less than anticipated. So even after a rise in diesel price by, say, 3 to 5 rupees per litre, the government would need 250 to 300 billion rupees to compensate oil firms with respect to subsidies at the current global crude prices. So I'll just take a vote. Please put your hands up if you agree to it. Do you think the government is justified in increasing price hike with this in mind? All right.
For yes?
You raise it for a yes, yeah, if you agree to this, that the government is justified. All right, thank you very much. We'll go to the next question, the very last question for this segment. Planning Commission member Abhijit Sen has attributed the 7.5 rupee hike in petrol prices in May this year to the depreciating value of the rupee. Now, he's been quoted that the price rise will have immediate impact on prices, but will not have a knock-on impact on prices. This is a one-time price adjustment. It will not have cascading effect things will stabilize in the long run. Do you agree to that? Yes, please.
You cannot say that it will stabilize in the future. It's like you are going to adjust with the rise in prices. Like people will get adjusted to the rise in prices. That's what might be he meant. But you cannot say that there is no cascading effect. In everyone's life, it is getting affected. And in the future, it's like, okay, I used to go with 6 rupees in the auto. Now I have to pay 10 rupees. So I get used to that. That is not a stabilization. It's like you have to remember, like in the break he was telling, in long run we all are dead. In long run we all are dead in the sense we cannot bear this expenditure, and at the end you are saying that okay, it's one time, it gets stabilized is a wrong assumption. That's what I feel.
One more thing I feel is this is like a game of convincing people. Actually, they are saying that it's a one time hike, and on the other hand, they are saying that they are increasing the price based on the world market, and there's no surety that world market doesn't change in the future. So this is just a play with the people's innocence and everything, I think.
Same thing, I agree with my friend. As he said, the question you said, the Abhijit and whatever he said is itself contradictory, as they are saying that the petroleum price is deregulated, and at the same time they are saying that it will move to stabilization. So it's just like they just want to attract the people, corporate world and all, and it's not justified to the poor people and below poverty line.
Would you agree or would you counter this point?
I'll try to get some economic rationale behind it. I think what Abhijit Sen was trying to say was that in the long run, even wages will probably adjust to the raise prices. So eventually, when people will move out in like in 1-2 years when their contracts are renewed, so the wages will adjust. That's number one. Number two is when their consumption patterns will also adjust. So probably people will start using public transport more, and they'll probably shift to electric cars or shift to a more renewable source of energy. So in the long run, that's what he probably meant when adjustments will happen. So this is probably the economic rationale behind when he made this statement.
And on that note, we will go for a break. Please do stay tuned.
Mobile, online and uncontactless. Flow faster with Visa.
Welcome back to Speak Out, the one show that brings to light questions unanswered, problems untouched, and voices unheard. We were speaking and discussing on the topic of the price hike in fuel prices. Value-added tax and central excise duties have added a big 26 rupees to the price of a liter of petrol. Do you think the government should explore any other avenues of imposing tax other than fuel?
Yeah, we can. What the government can do is that, although if not remove the tax altogether, we can what they can do is that streamline the taxes so that you can remove all the loopholes in it. Number two, what the difficulty with removing taxes is that the funding towards all social sector programs would probably come down. And we all know that the lobbying power of the corporate houses is quite high. So an alternative to this would be reducing social sector funding. So we'll have to look at it in that context.
Yes, please.
Probably also tax buying vehicles, new vehicles. I mean, despite the hike we've seen, the steep hike we've seen, the buying has not reduced even minimally. So that's a huge irony. I mean, we talk about a fuel price hike, but people are adding more vehicles to the existing number of vehicles, right? So probably tax them even more. Something what Chavez did in Venezuela a few years ago, right? One step was to cut off ties completely with the so-called world body which regulates the prices of taxes, and also probably develop alternate sources of fuel.
Right, but would anyone else like to give a comment? Yes, please.
I think for past several years, government has given enough subsidy to the corporate houses. I think the time has come now to at least go and collect the taxes from the corporate houses. And second, instead of collecting it from the poor people. Second thing is that we have the tax evasion too much. I think we have to streamline that process. It's not that we don't have taxes on each and every services, but the thing is that even the corporate houses and other individuals also, they are evading it anyhow. They are not paying it. I think this should be looked after. It should be corrected. Corrective measures should be taken to see to it that all the people they give the taxes to the government, whether it's corporate house, whether it's middle class, whether it's businessmen. Everybody should give the taxes. I think this will be a little help for all of us. That's what I feel.
Right. Please.
One more thing, as hike in fuel prices is related to hike in other consumer goods also. Now it is happening because even after distribution, not inefficient distribution of food through PDS system, a lot of it is left over. Now if we see that, if the government sees that it is effectively distributed, there might be some decrease in the prices of at least the food products. So that would be a way to decrease the, not of the fuel price, but at least of the goods that we consume.
Right. Yes, briefly, please.
I think here I want to mention the Goa example. Goa has cut all these 12% state tax on petrol prices, and they are getting that money from the tourism department. They're promoting the tourism, and they are cutting this essential goods. So every state should look on the money getting things like tourism or any handmade things or something, handlooms or something, and then they have to see that the essential goods or daily goods should not be taxed more. I think so.
All right. Let me give you some facts and figures. 65 oil discoveries in various locations were made in 2011 and 2012. Commercial production of crude oil has commenced in 11 of these sites. An early start of production activity across other oil sites in the country could help further boost domestic production and supply, thereby supplementing oil imports, especially given that domestic demand for oil and petrol products will continue to be on the rise. Do you think this would help, if we try to contain the production, the refinery and the refining and the distribution process, if we try to contain it within India, then do you think this will help? And if so, to what extent? Yes, please.
Actually, when we talk about petroleum is not a natural resource of India. In India, if you see, as per the survey, only 25% of Indian needs will be met by the resource of petrol which we have in our country. And as you're saying about the ONGC company, it is doing good from the last 60 years. It is getting discovering some oil basins or something, but even though they take all the oil from our India, it won't be sufficient for us. Rather than looking for the oil, they have to look for the alternative sources like solar energy or biodiesel or biofuel or something. And this should be they have to do something with vision. After 50 years, if you keep on doing like this, how will be like that? And taking away all the natural resources or refining or anything will affect us more. Such as a South Africa example for water, I think.
Anyone else? Yes, please.
Okay, I think this this price hike, which was massive 7, actually, yeah, prices eventually have to rise. We eventually have to shift from that. It's known, it's understood. But such a massive increase, I don't think was justified. It was driven by the concern for fiscal deficit. That was the main concern. If you see the number of corruption cases which has come up, if you calculate all the amount which was involved, that amount could have paid off all the fiscal deficit. I think much more than, because I don't have the exact figures.
Right.
So if they focus on that, I think it would have been much better approach. Second, I think what you said, tax evasion, that's one part. But if you look at, say, Delhi, I think 30 to 40, again, don't have an exact figure, but 30 to 40% of electricity is stolen. If they can just ensure that electricity is not stolen away, they can reduce the prices for that as well, because that's, again, as the electricity is the source which can practically substitute electric cars or electric cookers. It can substitute all these things. That has not been focused. So when you say that we want to change the way we use our fuel and we want to reduce import, the approach has to be broad-based, not just price-based. You increasing price doesn't solve it. It's a necessity. People will have to pay it. They can only change when you give them an alternative. You provide cheap electric cars, you provide some facilities to them, or cut on other things. Especially, I think for now, they should focus on corruption, because the amount is massive. It can pay all our fiscal deficit plus pays everybody decent amount.
Right. Yes, please.
So, in the short term, if you want to try and do something about the increased fuel price hike, there are a lot of politically controversial decisions that have to be taken. But I'm pretty sure in the long term, there are non-politically controversial things that can be done to ensure that we don't have such a large price hike. One of them is better awareness among consumers. A second one, which is very popular among some Western developed nations, is that you build an efficient and cheap public transport system, in a sense discouraging people from using so much car and using so much petrol. Secondly, how much energy and electricity we use as households is also something that can over time be curbed. And I feel these are steps that can be taken by everyone universally and does not necessarily have to be a politically contestable change.
Right. Yes, please. Very briefly.
I just want to give a small input into his answer, friend's answer. Actually, if we see the Indian transport system, actually more fuel is using in the public, not public transport, but private transport of goods. From Andhra Pradesh to Kerala, from Andhra Pradesh to Kanyakumari, or some Kashmir, they used to go send it with lorries, and most of the fuel is using in that way. And I think in this regard, I want to mention something. 92% of the tracks in India are constructed by British people. Only 8% tracks are constructed by Indian government in the past 60 years. So they are not. The people who are getting like rider minister or something ministries, they are not really concentrating on showing a way to reduce the there should be something. People should question things like this. People should ask for the transport systems, and this should be like everyone should feel responsible for the nation, I think. So that's what.
Right. Very briefly, please.
Yeah, just a very quick remarks. I don't agree too much with that, because I think it's more of the private cars that we have. You go around, find in the university itself, go outside the campus and see how many cars are running, how many private cars are running, how many public cars, vehicles are around. So I think it's most of the problem are so much of consumption of fuels by the private, cars and all this.
And just one person traveling in each car.
Yeah. So but no, transportation.
Better public transport.
Yeah, but not only the lorries and all, because
lorries is the main cause in transport system. Yeah. Because we are I think because we are not aware, because we are in a different level. We are in student level because we don't have any awareness of the system. Like each lorry gives 3 kilometers per liter.
No, it's definitely true. But the point is that each lorry also carries a lot of goods, which are for a lot of people. Okay, let me make this point. Okay, right? So if a lorry carries for 100 people, on the other hand, the same fuel is serving only 2 people who are traveling in a private car. So if you look at from the social cost and benefit angle, if you talking about only social cost and benefit, it is more costly to have private cars than
I think lorries, as you are saying, lorry will take goods from here to there, because so it is justifiable.
No, I'm not saying it's justifiable. I'm just comparing these two. If you're comparing lorry, which will carry your goods, which will be sold to 100 consumers, let's say. On the other hand, you have private cars, which will serve only one private car with the same petrol, 2 people going out, I think it's more costly in social terms.
Right. And on that note, we've come to the end of this show. We will go for a quick recap of what we have discussed so far. We have agreed that the government is taxing the fuel energy sector too much, and that we should also be considering for other avenues for our nation's energy needs. We thank all of you for participating in this discussion. And for the record, I am Kevin Panmay. Thank you for tuning in.